I'm Bruce Fumi. It's the 7th of November, and today I'm going to tell you a story about the most unlikely and surprising man to ever work for the Hudson's Bay Company in Canada. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then hit the subscribe button at the bottom right hand side at any time during this video. For books, further information, ways to support the channel, buy me a coffee, join the National Trust for Scotland, all that stuff is in the description below. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. I normally like to take you to a relevant location to tell you stories, but for today's story, that would mean taking you either to Orkney or Canada. My budget stretches to Crieff. I'm going to take you on Lady Mary's Walk. We might even go up the hill too. In some ways, the Hudson Bay Company was Canada before Canada was Canada. In 1660, what Westerners in our political incorrectness might call Canada today was French. Two young Frenchmen wanted to set up a fur trading post in Hudson Bay, but the governor said no. Now, when they went anyway and brought back fine furs to prove their point, they were arrested and fined. So they turned to the English for backing, and they got it from Charles II and his cousin Prince Rupert. Trading posts were set up in competition with the French. Coverage grew, conflict grew, and 100 years later, the British defeated the French in the 7 Years' War. You get where this is going, don't you? Our story starts in the summer of 1806. A disproportionate number of men from Orkney were hired to work for the Hudson's Bay Company. Now, trapping, transporting, transiting furs and supplies in the harsh conditions of a Canadian winter would take a special type of hardy bloke. And let's face it, Orcadians were Vikings with a haircut. So lots of them went to work for Hudson's Bay. Now the short-haired Viking that concerns us went by the name of John Fubister. Now the young John followed in his elder brother's footsteps and signed up for a 3-year term as a Hudson's Bay Company labourer on a wage of £8 a year. Now that might not sound much, but it was more money than John was likely to earn staying in Orkney. Initially, John was based at Fort Albany and worked in the supply boats with a reputation as a diligent hard worker who coped well with the rigours and harsh conditions, never failing to carry out a task that was requested. So the next summer brought bigger responsibilities, and John was sent as part of an expedition to travel 1,500 miles to the west supplying remote outposts. This was a job for hardy and trustworthy men, which brought them ultimately to a post at Pembina in what is now North Dakota. The post at Pembina was run by a man called Alexander Henry, and he recorded the events of one evening in his journal. I mean, he probably recorded the events of lots of evenings in his journal, but I don't think any others would be quite like this one. John Fubister, a Hudson's Bay Company employee, came to the door of Alexander Henry, the Northwest Company manager. He was complaining of not feeling well and could he come in and sit by the fire in his cabin. I can imagine Alexander Henry being so surprised that instead of saying, "Beat it, you Hudson Bay skank," he blurted out, "Aye, all right, come in and sit by the fire." See me, I'm the kind of guy who would say, "There's the fire, there's the pantry, there's milk in the fridge, help yourself, I'm off to bed." My wife's much more suspicious. She'd be saying, "Who's that strange man in the house? He's from the Hudson Bay Company. You know they're the competition. What if he steals something? What if he murders us in our beds?" Did you turn the gas off? I think I might have left the iron on. Now, I don't think Alexander Henry's wife was there. In fact, white women didn't go out to this wilderness. They certainly weren't allowed to work for the Hudson Bay Company. Native women were allowed to do menial jobs, but it was seen as far too rough an environment for civilised white women. Anyway, suddenly Alexander Henry hears John Fubister screaming like a banshee from next door where he'd left him in front of the fire. Henry rushed through and it became apparent why John Fubister was screaming. He was giving birth to a bairn. At first, this must have been like watching Alien, and then realising for the first time, John Fubister's a woman. Women aren't allowed here. She'd been there for over a year, and none of the men realised she was a woman. Okay, one of the men realised she was a woman. I get that, okay? But now it was out, along with a placenta. In his journal, Alexander Henry said, "I stepped down to him and was much surprised to find him extended out upon the hearth, uttering most dreadful lamentations. He stretched out his hand towards me, and in a pitiful tone of voice begged my assistance. And he requested that I would take pity on a poor, helpless, abandoned wretch, who was not of the sex that I had every reason to suppose, but was an unfortunate Orkney girl, pregnant and actually in childbirth." In saying this, she opened her jacket and displayed to my view a pair of beautiful round white breasts. That's how you know they were in a camp with no women. Henry finds a bloke giving birth in his own fire hearth, and what does he write in his diary? "Look at the tits on that." Now, I don't know about you, but I've got lots of questions. They're obvious. Like, how could she possibly have fooled folk all that time? I'm assuming an outdoor, rugged backwoods lifestyle where blokes pee behind a tree. And they either grow a beard or shave on a regular basis. Now, I'm assuming some form of communal living where even if she got over these first hurdles, at some point before her waters broke, pregnancy would have looked suspicious. I tell you what, John Fubister's fairly putting on the beef recently. Aye, I know, and he always gets teary-eyed when he's skinning beaver. And he's always licking coal. What's that about? Now, it turns out that John Fubister had shared a cabin with a guy called John Scarth, who had discovered her secret. Now, he was going to inform management, but after much pleading, he was persuaded to keep her confidence. Now, I don't know if there was a mutual attraction, inappropriate pressure, or a quid pro quo, but Isabel Gunn, let's accept that it wasn't really John Fubister. Isabel Gunn fell pregnant to John Scarth. Here's the bit that troubles me most, assuming that the conception was consensual. Isabel Gunn gave birth to her son at the end of December. She set out on this journey to remote outposts in autumn. Now, I'm no expert, but from what my wife tells me, Isabel would have known when she set out on that journey what would inevitably happen before it was over. And yet she chose to go anyway. She chose to guard her secret. Was it bravery in spite of the hardships of a Canadian winter? Was it fear in the face of the chill of moral judgment? How helpless, trapped and lonely must she have felt? No midwife, no sanitised surroundings, no mother's comforting hand, and certainly no honourable man to take responsibility for his actions. Now, she's just one of many incredible Scottish women, and I'm going to make videos on more, and there'll be a link at the end to a playlist. So what happens now? John Fubister had carried out his duties diligently and well. He'd worked to the satisfaction of the Hudson Bay Company. Isabel Gunn was forbidden from doing the work for which she'd already demonstrated herself capable. She was sent back to Fort Albany and she became a washerwoman. Then on September the 20th, 1809, packed up on a ship, she and her son set sail back to Orkney, where her son grew up fatherless and she lived out her life in poverty, sewing clothes. Songs have been written about Isabel Gunn, and I'll leave a link to an historical novel about her life in the description below. But aside from the obvious stupidity of refusing her work that she'd already been doing, Isabel Gunn's story makes me think of the Robert Burns song, Ye Banks and Braes of Bonnie Doon. It's a heartbreaking song about a young woman, Peggy Kennedy. The wealthy local MP for the area seduced her, abandoned her, and left her for the rest of her short life with an unsupported child. Anglicised from a diverse audience, Burns wrote, "Well, lightsome heart I pulled a rose upon its thorny tree, but my false lover stole my rose, and he left the thorn with me." Women already carry a biological burden and responsibility on behalf of the whole human race. And over the centuries, we men have added to an already considerable weight with our selfishness, machismo, and totally unjustified sense of superiority. 200 years after Isabel Gunn, maybe it's about time we put things right. If you want to hear stories about other incredible women in Scottish history, then a link to a playlist should appear about now. I'll add to the list in future. If you want to become a member or buy me a coffee, all that stuff's in a link in the description below. In the meantime, ha mé dóchas gon bí lama alive. Cheery and Rasta.